Steven Roy Goodman, host of Higher Education Today, a production of the University of the District of Columbia. Welcome back to the education program that connects you to contemporary issues, people, and institutions involved in the world of higher education. Today we'll be talking about learning disabilities in universities. Dr. Peter Eden is president of Landmark College in Vermont. Landmark College specializes in helping students with learning disabilities and ADHD to learn in new ways. Dr. Eden completed his PhD in microbiology at the University of New Hampshire and his postdoctoral training at MIT. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, pleasure to have you on, and thank you again for coming on.
Great.
Well, if we could start, could you say a word or two about what is Landmark College and what does it do?
Gladly. Landmark College is a very young, 28-year-old institution in Vermont. We're, I won't say small, we're optimally sized, about 500 students, and we serve only students with a diagnosed learning challenge. For example, a language-based disability or ability, such as dyslexia, ADHD, ASD, gifted LD, and all of our students are bright, college capable students, but they need a certain educational model, and Landmark provides that with our integrated services and our great number of faculty and staff.
Now, let's say I had dyslexia. Would I necessarily know that I had dyslexia?
You know, of the silent LDs, dyslexia will typically manifest and often is noticed. Even with compensatory mechanisms on how to handle dyslexia, typically the challenges do manifest in grade school, middle school, high school. So that's something that students and families are aware of fairly early on.
So let's say I knew that, and I was a high school student, and I was looking at a university. Right. Would I look at just Landmark, or would I look at a quote-unquote traditional school, or might I look at both?
It's a great question. Our students, many of our students are transfer students, meaning they went to, I won't call them mainstream colleges, because Landmark in many ways is mainstream, but has a very unique educational model. But many students do look for accommodation at other colleges and universities, and many of those institutions have very strong capabilities. But there are only 2 accredited colleges in the nation which serve only students with LD, and Landmark is one of them.
And what's the other one?
Well, the other one's down in Florida.
It's the competitive school. We won't make you say it.
But it's also an excellent college as well. But the point, Steve, is that one can receive accommodations, but there are programs. Serving students with LD is part of our culture, our ethos at Landmark College. You're not alone. Our training and our programs transcend the classroom, and we have programs outside the classroom in the dorm, etc. So every student has some LD, and there's great comfort in that. It deals with the issue of shame of having an LD, which some students may still try to hide that at any other college, but not at Landmark, because it's all out in the open, and we simply work to their strengths.
Well, that's an interesting point, because let's assume I was a student with a learning disability and I went to Boston University, which is a fun school and it's a nice city, and I went to BU. I might be embarrassed, perhaps, to share that I had some learning disability with my roommates.
Unfortunately, it's true. When receiving accommodations, there's a certain amount of nervousness in terms of broaching that with a professor, and certainly maybe with your suite mates. Although BU is a fantastic university and they have great services. But again, Landmark is different insofar as we don't compartmentalize our programs. It's everything. It's only students with LD.
Well, maybe if we can talk about that a little bit, because I think viewers would be interested in, not to use BU and Landmark as examples, but perhaps they do make sense. That if I went to Boston University and I needed some accommodations, they would provide some. But you're saying something different. You're saying that Landmark encompasses the accommodations into all walks of life. And I'm trying to understand, and I think viewers would be interested in, how do you do that?
Right. Well, a lot of the LDs involve problems with executive function, organization, time management, whether it's often a language-based disability or ADD or ASD. And at Landmark, we have faculty advisors. Now, these are not the advisors we had in college where you were reminded to take statistics 2 your spring semester. These are almost like coaches where they meet several times a week with the students and help keep them on task. We also have a really robust student affairs division where we ensure that the students have a very healthy sort of social environment as well. Because many of our students, some students on the spectrum, ASD, they have problems with social integration, social pragmatics, and that can surface in a classroom or in the dorm. But in many, many cases, it's an issue of executive function and time management, organization. And we have a lot of programs designed around that. And of course, we have really small class sizes, about 5 students for every professor.
5 to 1?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good ratio.
It's a very good ratio, and that's our model. But we pull the scaffolding away slowly. We don't hold them by the hands. It doesn't behoove us to hold any students by the hands. And we are a 4-year college now, but up until a year ago, we were a 2-year college. And our students moved on to baccalaureate programs, so we wanted them to do well, and they have done well.
So you must have some students then that go the other way. You suggested before that students transfer to Landmark, but you probably also have students that go to Landmark for a little while and then go to another college.
Steve, it's a good point. We have a phenomenon called a bridge semester where students can come and gain skills and gain strategies about how they learn. They learn how to learn in an optimal environment where everyone understands them. They're not just an outlier or someone who has to have, accommodations aside from the rest of the classroom. And these students, they do really, really well when they know their, you mentioned suite mates before. They can talk about their learning styles and about their skill set. And many of them stay for just a semester, many stay for a year. Fortunately, a lot of them stay for one of our degrees, which are liberal arts and business. We have life sciences, we have a computer science gaming program at the associate's level, and of course the baccalaureate I mentioned. Students who stay for the degree, 9 out of 10 move on to a 4-year program from Landmark, and they graduate at a rate higher than the national average for any learner, which is our best empirical proof that what we do works, not just on our campus.
Well, let's walk back and talk about the couple times a week that the student advisor or the faculty or the student advisor is working with the student.
Yeah.
Is it a set meeting? Is it every Tuesday at 3 o'clock? Is it every Friday night? What is it?
Well, it's entirely up to the student and the advisor. Remember, these are college kids after all, and a relationship is built between the faculty advisor and the student. And many of our faculty and staff have been at the college since its founding. It's pretty amazing. And they figure out what works best for individual students, what's their best modality for communication, and how frequently they want to meet. And again, we are very, very hands-on, but we understand the need for the development of autonomy from the individual as well.
Well, that's a fair point. Do you find that males and females learn differently in an environment like Landmark?
Well, that's a tricky question. I mean, the data shows, and frankly, LD, for some reason, there's a preponderance of LD in males. Even Landmark's about 65% males. And I think that as organisms, we all learn differently. You learn differently compared to me. And whether males do compared to females, I'm not sure about that, but not to generalize, there are some traits and some behaviors which we might ascribe to being male or female. But overall, the important thing is these students, one student put it, I don't have a learning problem, I have a teacher problem. Very few systems use universal design for learning, which is a pedagogical philosophy and approach where you reach different types of learners in a classroom. And they have not been in systems which are played to their strengths and are engineered in a way for the way they learn.
Well, that's an interesting point because, like for instance, if somebody says something to me, I hear it and I internalize it. But I know that a lot of people don't do that. They want to see it written down.
Oh yeah, right. It's true, and it's because of the small class size, one can deal with even with a small class size. There's heterogeneity in terms of the learning styles and the learning profiles. But that environment allows you to understand each student much, much better.
And does that change over time? So a student who's, let's say, in high school, will he or she, will his learning style or her learning style change when they're in high school or college? You know,
I'm not sure because it's not a very well controlled experiment, because not only are they evolving as a human being, but their environments are changing radically. So I would hate to ascribe one change to a chronological phenomenon of age when it could just be the environment or learned behaviors.
Well, let's say a student at Landmark wants to study abroad. Could they do that?
Oh, absolutely. We have many study abroad programs all across the world, and much like other colleges and universities, students who engage in study abroad, their retention is improved. In other words, they stay at the institution longer. And we all want to help shape responsible citizens in our interdependent world. Study abroad is a wonderful way to expose students to the diversity in the world. And it's funny because with diversity, Landmark is all about diversity of learning. And these students have been pushing the boulder up the mountain their whole lives. And so they understand a little bit about the diversity in the classroom setting and in the learning setting. So to show them a cultural sort of change and diversity in that regard helps them greatly.
But do they have the same support, let's say when they're overseas, that they do in Vermont?
They do, Steve. It's not the traditional model of study abroad where a cohort of students would go to Italy and they'd enroll at a university. We have shorter programs with one or two of our trained faculty to accompany them.
And you mentioned your faculty before, and you just mentioned another point about the training of the faculty. I wonder, do you have any faculty members who themselves have learning issues that they personally have overcome?
Almost certainly. Look at the general public. It's estimated that maybe 20% of the general public has some silent disability. And I know that many of my faculty have discussed with the students their own challenges, diagnosed or not. And I'm sure that goes a long way in showing the students that they're not an anomaly or an outlier.
And I could see how that would be important, that you feel that you're part of a cohort.
Right. Yeah.
Well, in terms of the cohort, so what happens to students after they finish Landmark? Do they, like at a regular college, is there an alumni association where people connect with one another afterwards? Well,
I'm going to have to get you there on the term regular college, Steve. I always bristle when I hear that because we are a regular college. It's just that we're so unique. We have sports teams, we have student clubs, we have cool kids, we have faculty members, we have everything. We are a regular college. But I'm a realist, and I understand that our unique educational model, it doesn't look like a regular college from that perspective. But we are a college. We're just really, really young. And we're very, very progressive. Students move on and they, gosh, I've got some alumni on my board. They've gone to law school, they're successful business owners, you name it. And they've done it. They've found ways to use their skills and their strategies from Landmark to help them get through life.
Well, your point about regular and irregular is an interesting one, and it's a fair point, and I accept it. But in terms of my students, because when I'm not hosting the show, I'm also an educational consultant, and I help students with their applications to universities. And I do have some students who do have learning issues. And in my experience, the students who have learning issues actually do figure out a way to accommodate themselves, and they're really good at creative ventures because they have put their energies into that.
It's another wonderful point. I mean, I know lots of people, very successful people, who've come out of the closet in terms of their elderly. They didn't go to a Landmark. Somehow they got it done. And I think that's wonderful. But I wouldn't propose that. Hope is not a strategy, as they say, for a young person with an LD. But some people do compensate tremendously. I would stop short of saying that there are special, powerful qualities that only these people have. It's just they've learned to overcome their LD. They've got grit, that thing that's difficult to quantify. And it's all about hard work and perseverance. But when you layer on skills and strategies, I know I keep saying that, ones you learn only at a place like a Landmark college, that's when you can truly communicate well, have the core competencies that businesses are looking for, irrespective of your degree. These core competencies of communication, written and oral, ability to listen, think critically. These are the sorts of things that we provide at Landmark College.
Let's say I have trouble, let's say I'm a history major, and I have trouble reading long texts. What do I do?
Well, in addition to universal design for learning as an approach that Landmark employs, we have quite a bit of educational technology, assistive technology, software, and tools used to help text-to-speech, and many, many platforms that we use to help students with language-based disabilities. Many of these things are part of the native software of some products we all carry in our pockets these days, so it's pretty powerful stuff.
So what would happen then? I would listen to listen to the text rather than read it?
Yeah, there are many, many approaches in that way to help a student. Indeed, I won't name all of them right now, but we have a very progressive ed tech department and division in it, the thread goes through all the classrooms, and many faculty like to use assistive technology with their students. Now, you made a good point earlier about the student at BU with needing an accommodation. Many of these assistive technologies are just part of a tablet or a phone, but there are some on the market which don't quite look like that. Students don't necessarily want to carry around something which is going to label them as having a disability. So this native software right in the tools we use every day of text-to-speech and whatnot are really, really powerful for these students.
Well, I wonder if technology is so powerful at this point that if everybody has it, then that goes away.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, that's an excellent point.
Well, but let's say you think about, like I remember when I wrote my book, it took a long time, right? And it's a lot of editing back and forth. Right. But I wonder if certain people would have preferred to speak into their computers rather than type.
Yeah, and of course, as you know, that happens today, indeed. And the future is very promising in terms of understanding neurobiology and understanding the neurodiversity of how we learn. And we do feel that with technology, these sorts of overt manifestations, again, of LD and the tools students will need will lessen somewhat due to technology.
But what happens, let's say I wanted to go to medical school.
Okay.
And let's say I had an LD of some sort, and I went to Landmark, and you guys did a great job, and now I want to go to medical school, or law school for that matter.
Right.
How would that work?
Well, again, we've been around for 28 years, and we do have a growing alumni base, and most of our graduates go on and earn four-year degrees and graduate degrees. And here's one thing, Steve, people have to understand. We don't cure and fix people at Landmark College. We don't fix them and rewire their brains necessarily. Some people think that.
So it's not a science fiction school?
It's not, no. But there's some sense of, will my kid go there and then can I mainstream her? Sure, but it's not because anything has changed biologically or on the cellular level. It's just how they learn. They learn their strengths. They gain confidence. And they learn these strategies to handle their biggest hurdle, whether it's a problem with mathematics, for example, or writing, or if it's a matter, again, of social pragmatics and integration into a social fabric with some of the ASD.
Well, this does raise an interesting point, because let's say you had an allergy to a food, right? Then you might be able to get an allergy shot. But you're saying something very different. You're saying that we're not necessarily giving a person a shot, we're simply accommodating and helping them to overcome what they have internally.
That's right. We're simply providing an environment which is most conducive to learning, because everyone learns differently. And it's not just some crutches or something. There's different approaches to how you present material and what you expect from students and how to help them manage any ADD and so that they can accomplish their goals.
And let's say I decided I wanted to go to Landmark, and I know you don't like the word regular, but just like any other university or college, would I apply for financial aid?
Oh, of course. Yeah, we provide significant scholarship support for students, and of course there's federal and state loans, and so just like any other college, we try to make Landmark as accessible as possible.
And what about you may not love this question, but what about the student who can't afford to go to Landmark? What suggestions or some tips might you have for students who just can't simply make it to Landmark?
Well, that's a fair question, Steve. Even with the significant scholarship funds we provide for access to underserved students, we have quite a few on campus, fortunately. One has to be a really smart consumer. When one goes to a community college or to a public institution, don't just believe the website or the brochure that there are accommodations. Demand to meet with those staff members. Ask how many people are in that office. Ask to meet with other students who receive accommodations and to determine whether or not they really have those resources.
But that raises a fair point. I mean, what university is going to say, we have a lousy accommodation ratio or record?
Right. And none of them will. However, the university, in fairness, won't know the level of support that some students might need. It might be much greater for some students. And it's a numbers game after that of how many students can that office serve. So I think students could do well, would do well at other places, but be really smart about the institution you choose and ask a lot of questions. But Landmark also has summer programs as well, short-term programs for many students moving up and on to other colleges to gain an increased and refined skill set.
How do those summer programs work, particularly for high school students?
Oh, well, we have short-term programs for rising juniors and seniors, and these are we have non-credit and some credit-bearing courses. And again, it's a matter of sending your son or daughter to a place which understands their LD and understands the heterogeneity of learning styles, and it gives them these sorts of tools for them to gain confidence in writing or critical thinking or mathematics or any discipline. So we have these programs that are on campus. There's usually a social component as well to it. Often our students, they move on to other colleges and they talk about the systems that Landmark College has.
Well, that is a fair point, because in the same way that we were talking about BU and Landmark before, some of my students, many of my students go off to do things in the summer when they're in high school.
Right.
And let's say a place like Cornell Summer School has a very big summer program. But as far as I understand it, it's not necessarily geared to the learning disability community like Landmark is.
That's right. That's right. We have to stick to our mission, of course, and our mission is to help change the way educators think about teaching and learning and how the public thinks about LD. And so, of course, that's evidenced in our short-term programs as well. Again, we have another program, Transitions. It's for students that are out of high school and they're moving on to college. Not Landmark. They're moving on to other colleges, but they still know they need to learn some new ways to learn. And they come into this program and they move on to the best colleges in the nation, and they talk about Landmark.
Well, you mentioned, the stigma, the taboo. Do you think that's still there?
Of course. It absolutely is. I'm a realist, and I know that not every student grows up wanting to come to Landmark College. It's going to take some time for them to understand that we are a college, we have everything you need, but we're just engineered for a student with an LD. And it's a very big issue, Steve, because we worry about students and families, and students themselves worry about what happens when I graduate. Will there be any discrimination based on the fact that I have an LD? Maybe that's why people keep it hidden. And so there's a much bigger problem and issue we're dealing with here, which is one of fairness to people who simply learn differently, like in accommodations, like any disability.
Well, I could see that, because let's say I had a special disease that required hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to cure or to contain.
Right. Would
an employer want to hire me if they knew that they would have to pay all that money to sustain my body while I was working at
That's
XYZ Corporation?
Right. And fortunately, most people are sophisticated enough to understand that the world is full of people with LD. Many luminaries have an LD, and they ascribe some of their greatness to the fact that they think differently, perhaps. And so my hope is that employers continue to evolve and understand that these students can do everything all of your other employees do, and in many ways might be able to think in different ways.
Well, you must have a career center where you advise the students when they leave. Does your career center offer particular suggestions that other colleges may not necessarily offer?
Well, our 4-year bachelor's degree was just approved this year, so we haven't had a cohort graduate from it yet, but we do have a transfer and career services office. So up till now, we mostly handle transfer services, and of course we help steer students toward institutions where we feel there's the best fit. And we'll do the same thing when students start to emerge from our BA program, our first BA program. There will be more, maybe even BS programs as well. We'll try to steer them towards industries and companies which we feel will be a best fit.
And how do you, since you'll probably have something to do with this communication with the companies at first, I mean, how are you going to pitch the companies on company X or company Y? You may really want to come to Landmark and recruit some of our students.
I think that's the conventional, traditional way, Steve, of doing it, but this is pretty common in higher ed as well. It's called applied learning, experiential learning, aka internships. One of the best ways to do it is to literally put that student out in the field. There's no better way to show a potential employer that this student has tremendous strengths. It's much better than a 3.9 GPA from Landmark with all these accolades. It's much better to find a way to allow that student to be out in the field, even if it's for a few weeks of a 1-credit internship. Then they'll realize these students are really, really smart, they're really, really strong, and of course we should hire them.
Well, Peter, we only have another minute or two left. Are there other bits of information or advice that you'd like to leave our viewers with today?
Well, I don't want to continually plug Landmark College, but it's such a unique, powerful place, and it's an epidemic in this country with LD. And a lot of the things we do involve teacher training and workshops for educators, and we are able to reach educators at every level. In this country, we have a serious problem in terms of transition to college and students in community colleges who have an LD. And society is missing out on thousands and thousands of potential workers, skilled workers, because we have not optimized our learning environments. We have a one-size-fits-all model. So through our Landmark College Institute for Research and Training, that's one of the things we do. And we're working on online hybrid programs right now for the post-baccalaureate student. We have one running, as a matter of fact. So we're evolving very, very quickly to serve all the different needs of our students.
Well, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been terrific. Thanks, Steve.
If you would like additional information about Dr. Peter Eden, please visit landmark.edu. If you have comments or suggestions about higher education today, please send an email to our viewer mailbox at highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. Thank you for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. Please join me again for another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm Steven Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.